We are at the heart of Rothschild Avenue, also known as the Tech Mile of Israel. About 100 years ago, we would have been standing on a sand dune because there was nothing here. You could have seen Jaffa's gates from here. 2 buildings to the right is Israel's Independence Hall, where about 70 years ago, the founder of the country, David Ben-Gurion, decided to declare the State of Israel. So I think this is a very interesting place, and maybe not by chance, the heart of the tech scene in Israel is exactly where the country was established. Within 100 years, we've been able to get to a point that in the skyscrapers, we have the world's top R&D companies, Facebook and Google and Autodesk and other companies in buildings at the heart of Tel Aviv. A lot of the Israeli talent finds its way to center around here. This is where the top of the startup industry is. It speaks highly that the energy of the city is here.
The creative guys which are doing all these startups don't want to live outside of the city. They want to live in downtown. They want to have urban life. They want to have coffee shops. They're looking for cities which are liberal, which are embracing people with all kinds of taste. You know, Tel Aviv, you can be male, you can be female, you can be gay, you can be lesbian, you can be transgender. Nobody gives a shit. Tel Aviv is providing this kind of atmosphere. It's an open city, liberal city, embracing city, celebrate the diversity. Add to it, you know, the blue sky, the great restaurants, the beaches, the beautiful people. And this is why we have such a concentration of creative people. You see more and more young people becoming involved in high tech, aspiring to develop their own startups. They are doing really fantastic jobs.
All right, so first of all, welcome to Healthy.io. We are based at the heart of Tel Aviv on Rothschild Avenue. And this is where we turn smartphone cameras into clinical-grade medical scanners.
Every day, millions of people across the globe get their urine tested. Pregnant women, diabetics, people with high blood pressure. Urine testing is the world's second most frequently conducted diagnostic test. But now there's a new way. We use image recognition and artificial intelligence to transform smartphone cameras into clinical-grade scanners.
The way to transform an embedded smartphone camera into a clinical-grade scanner goes obviously through 2 big buzzwords, big data and neural networks. We built a very sophisticated way of generating well-tagged data. We design, we bring in phones, we put them in a system, we then get the data is very well tagged, we allow for the neural network to improve different layers of the algorithm. I think we possess now a set of big data which is unparalleled worldwide. This is us in different generations, and we have a lot of jokes about, you know, where smartphones were about 10, 15 years ago. And we're super happy to have that huge, bulky device in our hands so we can call wherever. You know, if you think about the fact that an iPhone is only 10 years old, you know, it baffles you. It's a pretty exciting revolution to be part of. We no longer live in an era where there are subsequent paradigm shifts. I had a family emergency that actually opened the way to translate this notion of an era of permanent revolution into healthcare. My parents traveled to China, and my mother got injured, she lost her consciousness. She ends up in a hospital, they take CT scans, and my father calls in and says, they say she has a couple broken ribs, but I've seen people with broken ribs and something feels wrong. I think it's a bit more difficult. So I asked my dad, take pictures of the CT scan, send it to me via email, and let's see. And luckily I had on my speed dial one of the best trauma doctors in Israel. Within 3 minutes, literally 3 minutes, he writes back and says, hey, clearly she has pneumothorax, you won't want her to fly. Sort of connecting those dots, we haven't changed anything in the medical continuum. We've just shown that a digital layer on an existing process can really make a difference. Because healthcare for me, working for the president on, you know, Israel's neuroscience, bioinformatics, was always like this big field where, you know, big penicillin moments are going to happen in the 21st century, right? Before and after. Immunotherapy is going to kill cancer. Stem cell research is going to create organs for transplant. Big things. They might happen. But I was really shocked that the dynamics we see in this era of permanent revolution also operate in healthcare. as the healthcare system goes into being heavily weighed up against because of obesity, because of diabetes, because of kidney disease, it is recalibrating its path towards urine. That's a standard urine test that's done today in the lab. We wake up in the morning, stand in line, we give the prescription, we get an old cup, we go and pee in a cup, and then at the end of the day, they dip a stick, which is 35-year-old technology, changes colors accordingly, 10 different parameters measured in our urine, very important ones, dips and put it in this big scanner and does the scan, and we get very accurate reads. 150 million people in the US are doing this test every year. Why on earth are we still consuming it in the same inefficient way? Instead of waking up in the morning and going to the lab, the box gets to your home. And in the box, you have the same dipstick. We don't know the lighting condition, we don't know the phone, the camera, but the interaction between the phone camera and the kit, and ultimately the cloud, obviously, delivers clinical grade accuracy. Scanning it with a phone within the app, and you're good to go. This company is not about urine testing. It's about generic color reconstruction in the service of healthcare, right? The idea of transforming embedded smartphone cameras into clinical grade scanners. It will be relevant for skincare, it will be relevant for eyes, it will be relevant for other issues related to urine and others. So the vision behind what we do is to have people who consume it on a mass scale enjoy a highly simplified version of exactly the same test.
When you think about what an entrepreneur is, it's basically someone who sees the world with slightly different eyes. Most of us, often we don't even see the big problems around us because we take them for granted. If you have to ask what is the main trait of a startup ecosystem, it's a different attitude towards failure than exists elsewhere. Failure is the only way to success. If you can't fail, you can't succeed.
Failing is part of this industry. Actually, I don't call it failing, I call it the cost of doing business. Because if you don't fail, you limit your downside, but you also limit your upside. You know, these things are coming together. Otherwise, everybody would be in the industry where the upside is high and the downside is low. Doesn't exist.
You know, I was part of the Israeli negotiation team to Camp David, so is this a big enough fuck up to share with you?
How do I talk about failure? How do we do it in a way that it's fun? 97% of startups fail. In some culture, it's a shameful thing. We keep talking about the 3% that actually did it, they made it. They made the exit, somebody bought them, they made a big sell, they're now in the stock exchange, but we're not talking about the 97% that fail. Basically, we bring 4 entrepreneurs once a month to talk about the biggest failure, and it's kind of incredible. We said, like, it's gonna be extremely ironic if we fail, because then we can say that we failed at fuck-up night, but somehow it's just really successful.
I'd like everyone to close your eyes. I want you to imagine someone who has no idea what the fuck is going on at any given time. Open your eyes and look at an Oleh Hadash.
Nobody likes to fail. I cannot tell you it's very pleasant, you know. From my experience, I will tell you a secret, don't share it with everybody. It's much nicer to win than to lose. But you cannot win if you're not willing to lose sometimes.
There's this Yiddish word called chutzpah, which I think also exemplifies a lot of the Israeli spirit. If you meet Israelis, they are very honest. Some people would say brutally honest. It can come off as a little bit brash, but a lot of Israelis have it. It's this attitude that I can be my own boss and do their own startup.
That was the question, like, why didn't he just call it Hashem at that time? Because it was such a dark space that
I like to believe modern Israeli culture is certainly influenced by Jewish culture. We study the Hebrew Bible here, and we also devote time to Talmud study. Talmud is really composed of 2 documents. One is this code developed in the 3rd century called the Mishnah, and the discussions that built around that text in the 200 years after, what we call the Gemara, and those 2 compose the Talmud. The relevance goes on. We have to constantly reapply and rethink, but there's wisdom there that seems to transcend time.
The Talmud itself is a 600-year argument of the rabbis where they argue about what the law should be based on the Bible. And then how you study that argument is through argument.
you definitely feel it, that there's some type of, it's between two entities when that happens.
And that seems to make more complicated the issue of the Shliach Tzibur being the
God
one
is
who...
speaking through them. They're still speaking to the community. And
When you come from a textual tradition that says, well, read it differently, read it a new way. What else can we learn? We're not going to assume that the guy who's been here for 40 years has all the answers. We're not going to assume that my job is simply to do what I'm told. We're not going to say that as long as we all say the same thing, then we'll be okay. But we're going to bring those values of questioning and complexity and creativity.
The process of debating and arguing was partly how do you apply these ideas to the world as it gets more modern. The seeds of it are in the Bible itself. Let's say, just for example, the story of Abraham. God's about to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Just wipe them out, kill everybody. And Abram starts arguing with him. What, you're going to destroy these cities. What if there were 50 righteous people? And God says, oh no, I wouldn't do it if there were 50. Well, what if there were 40? And so on. They keep not just arguing with itself, arguing with God, that's pretty radical, but over morality. I mean, God is the source of morality. Here he's arguing with God over morality. So if Abraham can argue with God, so of course we're going to argue with the CEO from Intel or whatever. We won't be afraid of that.
He says that thing. Why doesn't she just not even ask him by now? I'm saying, she already knows what that blood is. Why does she bother going to the rabbi every single time?
That's a separate question. It might not be every single time. It might be that she wants to be sure. It makes perfect sense to me that there's this marriage between innovation and ideology, because I think people need a vision. I think people want to feel they're having a positive impact on the world. High-tech innovators here realize they're not just doing something for themselves, but they're helping build the country. There's a vision of making society better, of improving life, of doing something meaningful. Making money is not enough.
People are trying to explain what's going on in Israel, referring to the technology or to the military or to budgets or education. All of it is true, but all of it are the fuel. The question is, what is the spark plug? Because you have all these components all over the world. You have them in Germany, you have them in Japan. It's not enough. You need something else, and the something else has to do with things like culture, virtues, aspirations, the human component. And I think this is something which is very special to Israel. They wake up in the morning, they have madness in their eyes. So when you look on the startup nation or when you look on the explanation, this is part and parcel of our DNA. And our neighbors from behind the green line, the Palestinians, they also going these routes, and I think it's very good, very important for their economic development.
The mixture of nationalities in Israel and the diaspora who came back, the talented who came back from the States and all worldwide to Israel to build this ecosystem. We have the same opportunity now on the Palestinian side. We are counting on the diaspora to come back and to start their ideas from here and creating an equal ecosystem.
When we started fundraising for Sodara Ventures, nobody here was talking startups or venture capital. Nobody even knew what that is. Today, that has drastically changed, and in terms of building the ecosystem, I think we've made some significant progress.
Ramallah has become a de facto capital, right? So you have the incubators and the accelerators and the training programs, right? And so that, I think, also led to a hub for tech startups in Palestine. For our investors to date, 80% of them are Palestinians, both within and outside Palestine. I think there's certainly a desire to show that this can be done in Palestine.
Palestine by nature is an agricultural community. We all came from farming families. But what happened with Ramallah is that when the political situation changed, more work opportunities occurred within the city. And the young people came to live in the city. We ended up with an environment which is less conservative, more open to new opportunities, and people who would like to live in a less traditional way than other cities within Palestine.
Ramallah is mostly a city for the young people. The gyms, the nightlife, the theater, the art, everything.
This generation They're at a point where they want to see changes. You know, history repeats itself, and I think that there are some things that do need to repeat themselves and some things that we need to avoid. We know that there's not much we can do for the political situation or the economy, but we can do something with our own two hands and create a product. Mashvisor is basically a platform that helps real estate investors in America looking for a property. What Mashvisor does is it aggregates data so that investors can see, okay, where are the best cities for real estate investments, and then where are the best neighborhoods, and then where are the best properties? Would I make more money renting out the property traditionally, like with a one-year lease, or as a vacation rental by listing it on Airbnb? A research process that should take 3 months now takes about 20 minutes, 15 minutes. And we also minimize the time it takes for them to calculate their own returns. People are a little bit surprised to know that we serve the US economy and the US market because we're completely based in Ramallah. As you've heard before, all you need is, good internet and a laptop, and there you go.
Iptikar looks to invest in companies that are innovative. That naturally has led to more web and mobile-based businesses. Also, given, again, the limitations happening in Palestine, tech and internet is a good way to answer that.
Ramallah will soon be on the map for, the best international hubs because nobody wants to settle anymore for just a job. People are ready to be part of that community. They want to say, yeah, I contributed to an international hub.
Our companies so far are really exciting, I think, and they're all over the place in terms of what they do. Our first investment is Mashvisor, but we also have Red Crow, which is a company that actually is born from the problems in the region and the problems specifically in Palestine.
I started working in Ramallah after I got my degree in the US. And in 2011, Hussein and I started this project.
In our market, what we look at is how threat level is rising in a specific location hour by hour in a very complex political situation. You used to look for the one contact person that can confirm a specific piece of information to know what's happening in Syria, for example. Today, it's millions of people reporting constantly.
What we rely on is the information that people put on their accounts, like Twitter, Facebook. The variation between these people are extremely marginal that you can actually take the exact alert from the people that have entered it on their social media. We created a system that collects this information simultaneously. It goes through them and ranks them. Is it a reliable source or not? And it makes it easier for us to put it on the map and pinpoint exactly where the incident has happened.
For example, we have a specific event happening here, so you have the location. Within 2 kilometers, it's a high threat, which means it might be very violent and affect safety and security. The last circle here is only security complications. So you might be facing checkpoints and high security measures within a specific area, and it would be harder for you to move. Our target market consists of non-governmental organizations in both the developmental and humanitarian sector, in addition to diplomatic delegations and journalists. Some people who operate, for example, in the medical sector, time is very critical. Not being stuck on a specific checkpoint is very important. Today they can just open their mobile and see where incidents have been happening during the last 10 minutes.
These are the locations of all the clashes that happened since the beginning of September. In the West Bank, there was, for instance, 74, in Gaza 2, in Israeli-controlled areas is 0, and Jerusalem 29 clashes.
I'm very proud of what's happening now in Ramallah. And you can see that real community, real ecosystem, a very powerful ecosystem. It started to bring the people back, to start creating their startup and start succeeding from their homeland.
Working in Palestine is not easy for anyone really, and definitely not for tech startups or a fund like ours. There's many, many challenges, and the majority of them, I can say, are due to the occupation. And I think we have to be completely honest and forthright about those challenges. A company cannot import and export easily, which is why we focus on tech, right? In terms of people getting in and out, Peter, who is the CEO of Mashweiser, last time spent 2 days just trying to get back into the country. We don't have 3G still, and honestly, I don't think it's going to happen soon. So that technology, when we're developing apps, is really hindering us, right? If you can't test it easily, then it's very hard to develop an app.
The legal system is not much oriented with the venture capital culture and the startups culture. Therefore, most of the investors ask startups to register their companies in the US.
When you exit, all the tax money that you have paid, you haven't paid it inside your country, you've paid it somewhere else just because the laws of your country do not apply to your company, which is a pity. Hopefully, they'll be able to fix it before we exit.
Is there a reason why you've chosen to do it in Ramallah specifically? Because obviously there's limitations to working here, isn't there?
I don't know, home?
Home?
Oh.
I wish we had a more interesting answer.
Interesting answer. That's
Simply
it.
home, yeah.
One of the trends that is already happening for many, many years is a physical-digital interaction. So we think about digital technology, we all know what it is. We think about the physical world, we all know what it is, but what is the convergence between them?
Our vision was to create a box that sits somewhere and can launch and land missions by itself, not just in security or mapping or emergency response, but everything combined.
It really feels like we're starting to come to a tipping point with Gaza Sky Geeks. We saw that technology would create this window to the world around them and create opportunities for income and for a more sustainable future for themselves.